Let's go. Impactor was a deluxe class release during Siege. It was available in Wave 4 sometime in late 2019. This is the first time Impactor was ever given a brand new mold, and how does it fare? Top heavy as fuck, that's how I'd say it fares. Most of the mass is in the turret, because that's where most of the mass of the figure is. However, thanks to the construction of this alt mode, this means that this is the first tank in a good few years that can actually articulate more than just in one direction. My boy here was one of the first to rediscover that other dimensions exist. Come on. As you can see, he makes for a rather dinky, if heavily reinforced, tank design. He happens to come with plastic wheels on plastic treads, thankfully none of which are painted, because that would have eaten too much out of our battle damage budget, but I'll get to that later. And that's pretty much all there is to say about our boy and his tank mode. You can see that he's covered with some blast effect compatibility ports. They don't really come into play until robot mode. He's also littered with 5mm ports throughout to promote the combat system, which was basically a fancy way of saying, hey, remember 5mm ports? How fucking cool were they? For the compulsory size comparisons, I couldn't really think who to put Impactor with, but here's the first one I decided on. How dare you. Barricade was his wave mate during release. Here he is with Sound Blaster, who I think he does something with in the show. I don't know. I haven't watched it in about 2-3 years, and you couldn't pay me to go through it again. Unless you follow the Patreon. And as obligatory at this point, here he is with a figure everyone owns. Yellow has got to be one of the most interesting colours to include on a Transformer because it's different every single time. Did you know I brought back the Patreon? To cut a long story short, the support that gave the channel was actually very useful. The terms are a little bit different now, but I'm not going to drag the arse out of it here. You guys can follow the link if you're interested. If for whatever reason that doesn't tickle you guys' boat, I'm appreciative of the support of you guys just watching and interacting with the stuff on the channel. Anyway, back to your video. Impactor transformation is one that is relatively straightforward. There isn't any real unique twists or spins on the concept. The legs form the treads thanks to some compression, or should I say decompression. The arms forming the upper turret is relatively interesting in how it's implemented, but it's nothing that's going to change the name of the game. Gearwalk mode being part of the default is very fun. Apart from that, the only thing that I have any sort of irritation with is trying to get the head out from its slot. It's just a bit too tight. Maybe you're not meant to turn it round. I prefer to turn it round. And all that comes together to form our lovely Siege Impactor in his robot mode. This was one of those deluxes that kind of caught everyone off guard, I think. There are rumours and theories that abound concerning this particular release. I'll get to them in a little bit, but for now as a base figure, he's honestly such a solid outing. I absolutely love that head sculpt. I just love a lot of the tone that it conveys, and the good news is if you aren't a fan of the head sculpt, then you've got plenty of options. Because between the subsequent re-releases of this mold, apart from some changes to the tone of the colour palette, that's the only thing that ever usually gets changed. Thanks to the nature of the transformation, he comes with one of the most highly coveted articulation points on a Transformer, the ab crunch, meaning stop motion animators around the world can recreate Crash Bandicoot's really inappropriate victory dance from the end of a level. However, also thanks to the nature of the transformation, he comes with ankles, they're very limited, and he lacks wrists. However, one of the fun elements that come with this transformation is the fact that they incorporated 5mm posts on this part of the hand, which means if you want, you can just take an accessory that he may or... You motherfucker. Which means you can take an accessory that he may or may not come with and incorporate it instead of a hand. However, looking back on this years after the fact, I find I have actually gone a bit cold on this little accessory. I don't know, it just looks like he's got a bit too much wrist to work with. It's kind of like when they made Michael Rooker have an amputated hand in The Walking Dead. In that I'm not the most convinced that it isn't just his hand stuffed up there. Hey, is that paint chip? Of course, accessory-wise, he also comes with the gun that forms the barrel of the tank. It's not exactly going to blow your cock off in excitement, but it's definitely very suiting for a man like Impactor. I'm not sorry that it was out of focus, alright? I'm doing manual focusing. It's fine, I'll ask DaVinci GPT to fucking enhance it in post. Of course, if we're here to talk the size comparisons, here he is with another Siege figure, Siege Megatron. I have seen more of this figure in the past week than I have in the past 4 years. stop. Here he is with a figure everyone owns, and you can see he's actually quite big for a deluxe. Some might even say too big for a deluxe. Oh my god, he looks absolutely shocked at this information. And here he is with Siege Mirage, which if you know anything about the Siege lineup is quite interesting, because these two were at the very center of a fan poll concerning a 2-pack, and I've heard a lot of rumors that apparently Hasbro wasn't banking on these two winning. Now, of course, the theory stipulates that some other candidates of unknown origin were stipulated to be the hypothetical winner, but instead it was these two. I never bought that set after getting these two. Mirage was cast in clear blue. Impactor was a new head retool with a Decepticon insignia. They came with some repaint of a weaponizer that was supposed to be some obscure thing from the 80s. It didn't leap out to me is the point I'm getting at. At this point, Impactor is a mold. I'll be surprised if you haven't got it. He's been reissued in different variations of the paint scheme about 3 or 4 times in the last few years. I definitely think he's a solid investment if you're wanting to try and bulk out your Autobot ranks, or maybe you want to build a collection of the Wreckers. As if by obligation, he has battle damage effects down his lower legs, and almost as if by obligation, I have to mention it. Yeah, I think all things considered, Impactor is a very good figure. He isn't exactly one of the standouts of Siege by any means, but he was a very obscure release that I don't think anyone was expecting. I mean, fuck, I definitely wasn't expecting him to actually have a player's role in the series. God, I hated that show. I don't know what the aftermarket price is on this one. You could also buy the Netflix one, which had more battle damage. You could also buy the 3-pack one as mentioned, or you could buy a 2-pack version that came with a fossilizer. I actually bought the fossilizer secondhand off this really obscure channel, but I can't be bothered getting it off the shelf, so just imagine he's here. And that's about all I've got to say on Mr. Impactor here. What do you guys think of him? Why don't you let me know? For now, let's spin that motherfucking wheel and see what we're getting next week. Age of the Primes again? Alright, whatever. Cool. I'll see you next week for him. And until then, have a good one. Goodbye.